Have you ever felt like life is just too heavy? Like every single choice, every word you speak, and even every glance you give carries an invisible weight that's crushing you. You wake up already exhausted, convinced that the world is watching, keeping score, measuring your worth, adding up your failures, and only occasionally clapping for your successes. It feels like one wrong move and everything will collapse. But what if I told you the Stoics discovered a liberating truth thousands of years ago? The universe is completely indifferent. It doesn't care about your struggles, your to-do list, or your carefully crafted image. And that realization? That's where your real power begins. Your power was never about controlling what happens to you. Your power lies in mastering how you respond to it. When you choose clarity over chaos, courage over fear, and virtue over approval, something magical happens. Every single moment, even the ordinary ones, transforms into an opportunity for insight, peace, and genuine presence. There's an incredible, quiet strength that emerges the moment you step back from the compulsive seriousness that rules most people's lives. Imagine walking through your day feeling lighter, freer, as if gravity itself has loosened its grip. By simply observing your own judgments and clearly recognizing what is truly within your control, you begin to move through the world with a new kind of grace. Life isn't demanding perfection from you. It never was. It only asks for honesty, attention, and resilience. The more you practice this perspective, the more you discover a profound truth. Meaning isn't something you have to chase desperately. It's not hiding at the top of a mountain or waiting for your next big achievement. Meaning is something you uncover in the very act of living, when you show up with integrity, awareness, and deliberate intention. Every single day, you face a quiet but powerful choice. Will you act with clear intention, or will you let yourself be swept away by anxiety, endless expectations, and imaginary stakes that only exist in your mind? Stoicism teaches us that the only arena that truly matters is the one inside your own mind. The real battle isn't out there in the world. It's right here, between your thoughts. When you cultivate presence and learn to observe without desperately clinging, you develop a steadiness that no external event can shake. Moments that once felt heavy with fear or harsh judgment suddenly begin to reveal their hidden depth. Life, in its ordinary, everyday flow, offers incredible clarity, insight, and quiet joy, but only to those willing to slow down and truly notice. Picture your life as a grand theater. You step onto the stage every morning, but most of the script wasn't written by you. Some lines were forced on you by society, expectations, and trends. Others were written by your own overactive mind, dramatic stories about who you should be and what you must achieve. From the moment your eyes open, the mental commentary begins. What will others think of me today? Did I do enough yesterday? Will any of this even matter in the long run? Thought piles upon thought, building invisible walls that slowly block your view of reality. Yet here's the liberating part. These stories, no matter how convincing they feel, are nothing more than mental constructs. They only exist because you feed them your attention, your belief, and your precious energy. Try this right now. Picture your thoughts as clouds drifting across a vast, open sky of consciousness. Watch how they shift, change shape, grow darker for a moment, and then gently dissolve. Shadows may pass, but the sky itself, your awareness, remains untouched and unchanged. The narratives we cling to, success, recognition, approval, only gain power because we insist they define our worth. The tighter we hold on, the more anxiety we create. Our mind tricks us into believing that importance equals survival. Suddenly, one casual comment or one missed opportunity feels like a final verdict on who we are. Marcus Aurelius cut through this illusion with striking clarity. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Suffering is rarely forced upon us by circumstances. It is manufactured internally by the stories and judgments we repeatedly tell ourselves. Recognizing this truth is the first real step toward freedom. The moment your mind begins to break free from its own self-created chains. Once you start noticing these mental stories, a subtle but powerful shift occurs. The space between what happens to you and how you respond starts to widen. You are no longer automatically trapped by your old narratives. The desperate need to defend yourself, explain yourself, or perform for others begins to fade away. Anxiety, which is usually born not from reality but from anticipation, projection, and fear of judgment, starts to soften and lose its grip. Every imagined catastrophe, every mental rehearsal of failure you play on repeat, you suddenly see it for what it is, an enormous waste of your life energy. That same energy can now be redirected towards something far more valuable: deliberate engagement with reality, attentive action, and the quiet cultivation of inner virtue. As Seneca beautifully reminded us, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. When you truly realize that most of your suffering is self-created, a beautiful clarity begins to emerge. You start seeing events for what they actually are, instead of coloring them with exaggerated drama and imaginary stakes. By gently examining your assumptions, questioning your old stories, and watching how temporary they really are, your mind grows lighter. Decisions become aligned with your principles rather than driven by fear. Actions flow from reason instead of compulsion. And in that space, the first beautiful layer of true freedom quietly unfolds, profound, peaceful, and deeply transformative. It reshapes your mind's ability to respond with wisdom rather than react with panic. The distinction between what is within your control and what is not becomes crystal clear. Life keeps flowing whether we resist it or learn to release it. The sun rises. The wind changes direction. Seasons turn, all without asking for our permission. Yet your thoughts, your choices, and your virtues remain entirely yours to master. When you consciously focus your attention on what you can actually influence, you conserve energy, dramatically reduce unnecessary anxiety, and reclaim vast amounts of mental space. That, my friend, is where real freedom begins. When you begin focusing your energy only on what is truly within your power, everything starts to shift. A deep sense of calmness, intentionality, and quiet efficiency naturally emerges. Fear of uncontrollable outcomes slowly loses its tight grip on your mind. Instead of reacting with compulsion and pressure, you begin responding to the world with crystal clear awareness. Each moment that once felt heavy with imagined stakes now transforms into a beautiful opportunity to practice virtue and deliberate attention. Work, relationships, and important decisions are now approached with a steady, grounded presence. The energy you once wasted resisting the inevitable becomes freely available for meaningful engagement. With presence comes depth. When your mind is no longer fragmented by anxiety or endless expectations, life suddenly becomes tangible in its beautiful immediacy. Ordinary moments, a quiet walk in the morning, truly listening to someone, observing the world around you, tasting your food, or speaking with care, start to reveal rich layers you never noticed before. Have you ever wondered how much beauty you've been missing while your mind was somewhere else? Attention can finally rest fully on what actually exists, rather than being pulled into projections of what might happen or what should have happened. Marcus Aurelius captured this wisdom perfectly when he said, "Confine yourself to the present." Presence cultivates sharper perception, deeper insight, and a quiet joy that arises naturally from engagement itself, completely unburdened by compulsion or pressure. In relationships, something remarkable happens. They become truly authentic. Conversations are no longer tests of your worth or performances to impress others. Actions and responses now flow naturally from calm observation, genuine empathy, and clear reason. Empathy, freed from fear and expectation, deepens in a profound way. Listening becomes truly deliberate. Speaking becomes refreshingly honest. Connection is no longer transactional. It comes alive with real understanding and clarity. The ordinary begins to reveal its hidden depth when observed with intentional attention. Life itself starts to feel lighter, richer, and far more vivid. This same clarity flows naturally into your work and sense of purpose. Effort is no longer a desperate measure of your worth or a performance waiting to be judged. Every action, whether mundane or monumental, becomes a meaningful practice in virtue. Marcus Aurelius reminds us powerfully, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Work transforms into a daily exercise in deliberate attention, personal integrity, and alignment with your deepest principles. Tasks are approached with genuine focus and care, free from the heavy weight of imagined judgment. Even challenges and setbacks are gently reframed as valuable opportunities to cultivate patience, resilience, and wisdom. The mind, no longer enslaved by expectations, experiences a beautiful clarity, freedom, and a deep sense of purposeful engagement in every endeavor. Success is now measured internally, by how well your actions align with your values and virtue, not by external applause or recognition. Ultimately, joy emerges as a natural consequence of this practice. By learning to act as if nothing matters in the external sense, by detaching from imagined stakes and compulsive attachment, we paradoxically discover the true weight and value of life itself. Love flows more freely. Forgiveness comes more easily. Laughter rises more naturally. Change, loss, and even death lose their terrifying grip because we understand them as part of life's natural rhythm. Life is no longer denied or avoided. It is fully embraced. We dance with it gracefully rather than wrestling against it with force. The art of living lightly, just as the Stoics envisioned, allows a mind unshackled by fear or obsession to experience true clarity, resilience, and freedom. Every single moment becomes alive with potential, sharp observation, and deliberate engagement, cultivating a life rich with presence, insight, and authenticity. If these ideas have been resonating with you, then subscribing isn't just a simple click. It's a conscious choice to continue exploring clarity, freedom, and virtue alongside a community dedicated to deep reflection and mindful living. Subscribing becomes a powerful commitment to yourself, a meaningful step toward cultivating greater presence, awareness, and the quiet inner strength to live intentionally every day. The more you observe life with this new awareness, the clearer the line becomes between what is within your control and what is not. So much of our human energy is wasted wrestling with circumstances that will never bend to our will, desperately trying to shape reality as if it were soft clay in our hands. The sun rises whether we notice it or not. The wind shifts without our permission. Storms arrive unannounced, and seasons change regardless of our carefully made plans. To resist these natural flows is to invite unnecessary tension, frustration, and anxiety into our lives. Yet within this same indifferent reality, there exists a sacred sphere that remains entirely ours, our responses, our intentions, and our choices. The real power of focus lies not in demanding that the world conform to our wishes, but in cultivating mastery over the part we can actually influence. At first, this distinction may feel subtle, almost imperceptible. Life has a clever way of convincing us that external events are inseparable from our well-being. A missed opportunity, an unkind word, or an unexpected failure can feel like a direct attack on who we are. But when you truly begin to see the difference, everything changes. But when the mind finally begins to disentangle the external from the internal, the liberation is immediate and profound. Anxiety starts to melt away because you no longer waste precious effort resisting what cannot be changed. The energy that was once lost in futile struggle suddenly becomes available for purposeful, meaningful action. When you consciously align your effort with what you can truly influence, your thoughts, your choices, and your virtues, every decision becomes precise, intentional, and deeply impactful. Nothing is wasted anymore. The serenity that emerges is not passive resignation. It is an active clarity, a conscious acceptance of reality exactly as it is, combined with wise action wherever change is truly possible. This powerful principle applies to every single corner of existence. In relationships, you cannot dictate how another person thinks, feels, or reacts. In work, you cannot control market fluctuations, fierce competition, or the unpredictable outcomes of your endeavors. And in life more broadly, you cannot guarantee that circumstances will always align perfectly with your desires. The Stoics observe something crucial. Suffering arises not from what actually happens to us, but from our misplaced belief that it should not happen at all. When you finally release the illusion of control over external things, your attention becomes sharper, your choices cleaner, and your engagement with the world far more grounded. Focusing only on what is within your power prevents wasteful mental effort and cultivates a life of deliberate attention, beautifully free from the heavy clutter of impossibilities. There is a profound psychological shift that takes place when you fully inhabit this perspective. Have you noticed how your mind used to instantly leap into resistance the moment something went differently than expected? Now, something different happens. Each time an event unfolds beyond your control, the mind no longer rushes to fight it. Instead, calm observation, thoughtful reflection, and measured response naturally take its place. Anger fades. Disappointment softens. Frustration diminishes, because the mind is no longer entangled in illusion. The space created by this acceptance opens the door for intentional growth, strategic action, and the steady cultivation of beautiful virtues like courage, wisdom, and temperance. The world does not bend to our will. It has no obligation to. Yet you remain sovereign within the realm of your own choices. This sovereignty is not arrogance, nor is it cold withdrawal. It is the profound recognition that true control is internal, and that external pressures are best met with reasoned engagement rather than frantic struggle. Even your perception of time itself is transformed when you operate from this understanding. When you expend energy trying to control uncontrollable events, time feels scarce, hurried, and tense. Worries multiply and compound, creating that exhausting sensation of perpetual urgency. But when you focus instead on what you can direct, your thoughts, your actions, and your virtues, a wonderful sense of spaciousness returns. Each moment can now be lived intentionally rather than anxiously. The mind is freed from the endless loop of imagined scenarios and speculative worries. Every decision, every action, and every interaction becomes aligned with your inner principles rather than external expectations. The energy you once devoted to resisting what cannot be changed is now beautifully available to cultivate insight, resilience, and deeper connection. Even the seemingly mundane aspects of daily life begin to reveal this principle in action. Traffic delays, unreturned messages, or sudden changes in plans, these minor disruptions that once triggered outsized emotional reactions, now serve as gentle reminders. By simply observing how these events naturally occur outside your control, you clearly see the futility of resistance. Yet within each of them lies a quiet opportunity, the chance to respond thoughtfully. A pause, a measured breath, a conscious choice not to react impulsively. These small exercises in internal governance accumulate over time and create lasting change. Life gradually becomes less of a battlefield and more of a practice ground for true self-mastery. The mind learns, perhaps for the first time, that real power lies not in controlling externals, but in the discipline of its own faculties, and in the consistent cultivation of virtues that guide your actions, no matter what circumstances arise. Through consistent practice, paying attention to what is controllable becomes habitual. Reactions are tempered. Perspectives widen. Anxiety naturally diminishes. Life retains all of its unpredictability, yet your mind becomes a steady vessel, calm, clear, and graceful, capable of navigating any turmoil with serenity and effectiveness. By clearly distinguishing between what is yours to shape and what is not, you cultivate both deep inner serenity and genuine outer effectiveness. Building upon that foundation of serenity and effectiveness, we discover something even deeper. The effort we expend now aligns perfectly with actions that truly matter. The mental space we free up from all those futile attempts at control becomes incredibly fertile ground for wisdom, presence, and lasting resilience. In this conscious engagement with what we can actually influence, we finally discover the true power of freedom, a quiet sovereignty over ourselves, even while living in a vast world that continues to unfold without our command. Clinging tightly to outcomes, approval, and imagined importance consumes far more energy than most of us ever realize. Every disappointment can feel like a heavy weight pressing against your chest. Every rejection feels like a harsh mirror reflecting some flaw we've internalized as absolute truth. Yet the moment your mind begins to release its desperate insistence on control, the way you perceive these very same events transforms completely. Life's challenges no longer appear as harsh verdicts on your character. Instead, they become gentle invitations to practice discernment, patience, and resilience. Rejection, failure, or disappointment shift from being painful indictments into useful data points. They illuminate your habitual reactions, reveal hidden attachments, and clearly highlight where your focus may have strayed. This subtle but powerful shift, moving from seeing events as judgments to viewing them as helpful reflections, creates a spacious opening where true clarity can emerge. And from that space, intentional action arises naturally, completely unburdened by fear of judgment or imagined consequences. It is truly astonishing how much of human suffering is tied to our deep compulsion to feel significant. We often act as though recognition, rewards, or status are what ultimately determine our worth. Yet these external markers are fleeting and unreliable at best. When we finally grasp this truth, a beautiful paradox reveals itself. By loosening our tight grip on significance, real significance begins to appear organically in our lives. Moments we once overlooked, the spontaneous laughter of a friend, the quiet insight behind a simple idea, or the deep satisfaction of a well-chosen action, suddenly become profound in their immediacy. We start noticing the hidden depth in ordinary experiences, not because we measure them against impossible standards, but because they exist fully and unfiltered. Even our perception of failure transforms under this new lens. What once felt catastrophic now reveals valuable patterns, important lessons, and fresh opportunities for adjustment. Each misstep is carefully analyzed, not for self-shame, but for genuine insight. The Stoics emphasize that judgment itself creates suffering. By seeing failures objectively, without coloring them with exaggerated stakes, we cultivate real resilience. We become capable of responding thoughtfully, learning efficiently, and moving forward with calm intention rather than reactive anxiety. The mind, once dominated by fear of loss or humiliation, now becomes a powerful tool for discernment, reflection, and deliberate action. This healthy detachment from outcomes does not create passivity or indifference. On the contrary, it fosters engagement with greater precision and clarity. Actions are no longer clouded by worry. They arise instead from a reasoned understanding of cause and effect, guided by virtue and practical possibility. Energy is intelligently redirected away from resisting circumstances and toward what we can actually influence: our thoughts, our habits, and our responses. Ultimately, the practice of letting go of unnecessary attachment to significance reveals a paradoxical truth. Meaning is not diminished, it is amplified. Life becomes richer, more vivid, and more deeply aligned with our authentic values. We act with presence, integrity, and intentionality, while the constant noise of imagined judgment quietly falls away. Our focus naturally shifts from defending an arbitrary sense of worth to cultivating inner virtues that carry real, enduring value. The mind learns to perceive life clearly, to engage fully, and to find deep contentment in the effort itself. By releasing the compulsion to constantly fight for significance, we discover that happiness and fulfillment are not earned through external recognition. They are uncovered in the quiet mastery of perspective, in the alignment of action with principle, and in the freedom to engage without desperate attachment to any particular outcome. The insight gained here ripples across every facet of life. Each day now presents challenges that once would have triggered anxiety or fear, but are now met with measured response and calm discernment. Social interactions, professional efforts, and creative pursuits transform into arenas of mindful engagement, rather than exhausting stages for performance or judgment. The liberation from clinging allows us to observe without overreaction, to participate without obsession, and to put in effort without compulsion. This is the very essence of Stoic resilience, clarity, presence, and the profound freedom to act with virtue in a world that unfolds independently of our demands or expectations. Through sustained practice, this shift gradually becomes habitual. Happiness no longer hinges on approval. Significance no longer depends on external validation. And disappointment loses much of its painful sting. Life begins to flow more smoothly, not because the circumstances have changed, but because our mind has recalibrated its responses. As this recalibration of the mind becomes second nature, each moment is now observed, reflected upon, and engaged with deliberately. The wisdom gained from this approach compounds quietly over time. Reactions become more tempered, attention grows sharper and more focused, and energy is wisely conserved. In releasing the compulsive need for importance, we reclaim both inner freedom and true presence. We discover a deeper, more resilient form of contentment, one that doesn't just survive the unpredictability of life, but actually thrives within it. There is a profound shift that occurs when the mind finally stops straining for control and begins to inhabit the present moment fully. Time, which once felt like an endless series of obligations, deadlines, and imagined consequences, now stretches out into clarity and beautiful possibility. Every sensation, every small detail, every subtle nuance that previously went unnoticed begins to take on real significance, simply because your full attention now rests gently upon it. The soft rustle of leaves in the wind, the warm touch of sunlight on your skin, the distant sound of a conversation, these are no longer mere background noise. They become part of a rich, living tapestry of existence, something to be deeply felt and genuinely appreciated. In this state, life ceases to be a performance staged for others or a constant test of your self-worth. It becomes immediate, tangible, and vibrantly alive. The Stoics taught that the mind is the true gateway to freedom. When awareness is deliberately cultivated, the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary. Presence itself becomes an act of conscious participation in the unfolding of reality. The liberation of your attention from fear, harsh judgment, and imagined expectations allows a subtler, more profound kind of clarity to quietly emerge. Mental chatter, that endless speculation about future outcomes, the anxiety about what might happen, and the self-imposed pressure to constantly prove your worth, gradually loses its urgency. Without these heavy burdens, the mind can finally rest lightly. It notices what is, rather than endlessly projecting what should be. Every simple act, whether pouring a cup of tea, walking along a quiet street, or truly listening to a friend, becomes a complete microcosm of lived experience, whole and meaningful in itself. Each moment turns into a portal through which insight, creativity, and genuine connection can flow freely, unimpeded by distraction or obsession. By dwelling fully in the present, the mind sheds the unnecessary weight of imagined significance and discovers a natural rhythm in which awareness and action are beautifully harmonized. This shift also deepens the very texture of your perception. Previously unnoticed details, colors, textures, sounds, and patterns of movement become vividly alive, as if the world itself has suddenly gained new depth and richness. Ordinary tasks, like preparing a meal or folding clothes, transform from mere obligations into meaningful opportunities for engagement. The experience of eating, speaking, walking, or simply observing becomes a kind of meditation in motion. Seneca captured this beautifully when he wrote, True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. The richness of life is not created by grand gestures or monumental achievements. It is revealed in the clear perception that arises when the mind is no longer fragmented by fear, judgment, or imagined stakes. Presence allows the ordinary to reveal its quiet beauty, the mundane to disclose its hidden value, and the simple act of living to feel like a profound exercise in participation. As presence deepens, attention becomes less scattered and far more precise. The mind no longer flips frantically from worry to anticipation, or from regret to longing. Instead, awareness rests gently and steadily on the unfolding of reality, capturing what is, exactly as it is, rather than what is imagined. This heightened state of presence has a remarkable effect on our emotions. Anxiety softens. Frustration loses its sharp edge. Even grief can be held with gentleness rather than tight resistance. Without the heavy overlay of imagined consequences, we can witness our internal states without being overwhelmed by them. Emotions are allowed to exist fully, yet they no longer dominate our attention. This creates a powerful form of psychological resilience rooted in calm observation rather than suppression. By concentrating on conscious engagement and allowing the rest to unfold naturally, we cultivate a mind capable of navigating complexity with steadiness, openness, and clarity. The present becomes a sanctuary, a safe, peaceful space in which internal states are observed, understood, and gently integrated, rather than feared or desperately manipulated. Presence also amplifies the quality of our interactions with both the world and other people. Listening becomes deeper, more attentive, and truly responsive. Conversation is no longer a performance or an exercise in impression management. It turns into a genuine exchange grounded in awareness and mutual attention. Creativity flourishes naturally because the mind is no longer preoccupied with judgment, comparison, or imagined standards of success. Each decision, each action, and each gentle gesture arises from a place of clarity and intentionality, beautifully unclouded by compulsive thought. Aristotle reflected on this natural alignment of action and awareness when he noted, "Pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work." When attention is fully liberated from fear and imagined evaluation, something beautiful happens. The work itself and the simple act of engagement become the true sources of fulfillment and insight. The shift toward presence fundamentally changes our perception of time. What once felt rushed or painfully scarce now expands into a wide, open continuum filled with opportunity and gentle reflection. We begin noticing rhythms, patterns, and the natural flow of life that previously went completely unrecognized. Each moment stands complete in itself, sufficient, whole, and needing no external validation or imagined urgency. The mind moves from being a passive spectator to an active participant. It observes without unnecessary interference, while acting with clear discernment and integrity. Socrates' observation feels especially powerful here. Beware the barrenness of a busy life. Activity without presence may create motion, but it rarely produces real engagement. By fully inhabiting the present, we transform ordinary motion into meaningful action and simple observation into genuine insight. This cultivates both depth and clarity in every experience. Ultimately, this awareness fosters a lighter, more resilient heart. Freed from the exhausting compulsion to perform, prove ourselves, or constantly anticipate what comes next, we can finally approach life with openness, curiosity, and gratitude. The ordinary becomes extraordinary, not because anything around us actually changes, but because our perception itself has been transformed. Life is no longer a constant rehearsal for an imagined audience or an endless series of tests for approval. Instead, it becomes a rich field of conscious participation, a series of moments to be attended to fully, each one rich in texture, insight, and meaning. By cultivating presence, we reclaim the vibrancy of experience, the clarity of perception, and the freedom to engage with life on our own terms. This is grounded in Stoic wisdom and the attentive observation of the world exactly as it is. Relationships are among the clearest mirrors of our inner state. They respond directly to the level of presence and freedom we carry within us. When we remain tethered to external validation, every interaction turns into a test, a measure of worth, a negotiation for approval, or a silent scorecard of social performance. Words are chosen not for clarity or truth, but for calculated effect. Gestures become carefully planned to impress or appease. The heart of real connection gets replaced by the mind's constant tallying, and what should be a natural exchange of understanding turns into an exhausting performance. Yet when the mind is unburdened by the need to prove itself, these interactions shift in quality. Conversations no longer feel like examinations, and relationships stop being arenas where self-worth is constantly at stake. What emerges instead is authenticity, an unforced engagement that feels profoundly liberating. The absence of compulsive calculation allows presence to enter fully, creating the perfect conditions for real dialogue, intimacy, and understanding to flourish naturally. Freedom from attachment to outcomes also changes the stakes of conflict. Disagreements, misunderstandings, and mistakes no longer trigger intense fear of rejection or shame. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to practice patience, discernment, and reasoned response. When reactions are guided by conscious choice rather than compulsion or fear, tension dissolves more naturally. The mind, no longer preoccupied with anticipated judgment, can navigate difficulty with composure. Conversations that once would have quickly escalated into arguments now unfold with measured attention. Each person can express themselves without defensive overcompensation. The relational space itself becomes a beautiful reflection of inner mastery, a mirror of the serenity and clarity cultivated within. This shift also alters the subtle chemistry of human connection. When anxiety about impression or evaluation is removed, your presence becomes noticeable to others. There is a transparency, a calm confidence that naturally invites trust and openness. Genuine engagement attracts reciprocity. People respond warmly to the clarity and authenticity of someone who is unbound by fear. Carl Jung captured this idea powerfully when he noted that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. In relational terms, this transformation occurs because the absence of clinging creates room for mutual discovery, insight, and shared growth. Relationships cease to be purely transactional. Instead, they become arenas of co-creation, where each participant contributes to a shared dynamic that is alive, responsive, and continuously evolving. Even everyday interactions benefit greatly from this presence. Small gestures, a nod, a smile, or a simple word of acknowledgement, are no longer weighed for their impact on reputation or significance. Small gestures like a nod, a smile, or a word of acknowledgement can now be offered freely, without any hidden expectation of validation or reciprocation. Attention and care flow naturally and fully. The mind that still clings tightly to approval turns even minor social exchanges into exhausting rehearsals, performances, or careful calculations. In contrast, the liberated mind sees each moment exactly as it is. It recognizes that true value lies not in the outcome, but in the quality of engagement itself. Aristotle's observation that pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work extends beautifully to relationships. The simple act of engaging fully, attentively, and without obsession over results becomes its own reward. We experience real connection not because it elevates our social standing, but because the act of participation itself feels deeply meaningful. This freedom also opens the door to genuine emotional honesty. Without the constant fear of judgment, we can express vulnerability without expecting a specific response, disappointment, or approval in return. Empathy deepens naturally because it arises from the heart, not from obligation or calculation. The quality of our listening improves dramatically. The mind is no longer preoccupied with self-defense or the need to prove our worth. The Stoics understood that internal mastery shapes our entire perception of the external world. Marcus Aurelius expressed this powerfully when he wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." By releasing our dependence on the reactions of others, relational life loses much of its heavy weight of anxiety. Our experience is now shaped by clear intention, presence, and virtue, rather than imagined evaluation. Even challenging relationships begin to transform under this principle. Interpersonal friction, resentment, and disappointment are natural parts of social life. The mind, now unbound by compulsive attachment, can engage with these difficult moments with curiosity and clarity instead of knee-jerk reactivity. Conflicts become valuable opportunities to practice patience, deep listening, and perspective-taking. Rejection or misunderstanding no longer feels like proof of personal inadequacy. It is simply understood as a circumstance beyond our control. The energy that was once wasted on defensiveness or anxiety is now redirected toward understanding, problem-solving, and authentic engagement. Presence cultivates resilience and steadiness, allowing interactions to unfold with calm and intentionality. Ultimately, the wisdom of acting as if nothing matters becomes most tangible and beautiful in our relational life. Freed from the compulsive need to perform, explain, or justify ourselves, we engage authentically, attentively, and with a light, natural presence that permeates every interaction. The mind that once evaluated every gesture, word, and facial expression now participates fully, responding from awareness rather than compulsion. This does not diminish care or commitment. On the contrary, it enhances them, allowing acts of kindness, insight, and engagement to flow more naturally and effectively. By consistently practicing presence in our interactions, we begin to notice the subtle rhythms of human connection. Body language, tone of voice, timing, and the gentle shifts in emotion become perceptible in ways that were previously hidden by worry or preoccupation. Engagement becomes fluid, responsive, and truly alive as our attention rests fully on what is happening, rather than on what might happen or should happen. The relational space itself turns into fertile ground for insight, growth, and authentic exchange. The mind, no longer fragmented by fear of judgment or attachment to results, becomes capable of perceiving and responding with clarity, compassion, and intentionality. This profound transformation in relational life mirrors the larger shift happening within us. Happiness and connection emerge not from controlling others or desperately demanding validation, but from mastering our attention, presence, and internal freedom. There is a remarkable shift that happens when effort is untethered from the need for external validation. Tasks that once felt heavy, stressful, or laden with expectation suddenly begin to unfold with a sense of purpose and surprising ease. As this inner freedom deepens, work undergoes a powerful transformation. Work is no longer a means to prove your worth, and achievement is no longer the ultimate measure of your value. The compulsion to control outcomes, to constantly anticipate judgment, or to desperately demand recognition gradually dissipates. What remains is pure and beautiful, the act itself, that deliberate, attentive, and principled engagement with whatever lies directly before you. This is the very essence of Stoic practice, aligning your actions with virtue, principle, and clear intention rather than chasing the applause, acknowledgement, or judgment of others. In this liberated state, effort itself becomes sufficient. It stands as a quiet testament to the remarkable capacity of the human mind to operate independently of external circumstances. When work is approached as practice rather than performance, the whole notion of burden transforms. Mundane tasks, small daily routines, and everyday responsibilities are no longer chores to endure or hoops to jump through. They become the canvas upon which presence, skill, and wisdom are patiently exercised. Each gesture and each choice turns into an opportunity to enact courage, patience, and discernment. The Stoics emphasize that true excellence is found in the fidelity of action, not in its recognition. Marcus Aurelius captured this beautifully when he observed, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." In this context, every task becomes a chance to practice being the person you aim to be, without waiting for external validation. The heavy weight of judgment slowly lifts, and the mind discovers real freedom in deliberate, focused action. The liberation from attachment to outcomes also changes the entire rhythm of ambition and aspiration. Goals are no longer heavy fetters that bind you. They become gentle signposts, guiding your attention towards skillful practice and steady growth. Progress is now measured by internal alignment rather than external recognition. Repeated effort strengthens your capacity, deepens your insight, and builds character, instead of feeding anxiety or insecurity. Carl Jung offered a powerful insight here. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakes? Applying this wisdom, work and purpose become reflections of internal clarity and conscious choice, not performances staged for reward or approval. The focus naturally shifts from achievement as the ultimate standard to engagement as a daily practice of virtue. Even high-stakes or high-visibility tasks transform under this new lens. Pressure diminishes significantly when the mind truly understands that your worth is not contingent upon any particular outcome. Performance anxiety loses its tight grip, replaced by attentive engagement that allows greater flexibility, creativity, and adaptability. Every decision, every act, and every contribution is now judged not by its recognition, but by the integrity with which it is carried out. This internal standard, deeply rooted in Stoic principle, anchors your effort. It provides clear direction and steady focus while protecting the mind from being destabilized by external forces. Effort becomes sustainable. Energy is preserved. And the experience of work itself grows deeply satisfying because the mind is finally free from compulsion. Work is also richly enriched by presence. Mundane tasks no longer slip past unnoticed, and repetitive effort turns into a fertile arena for mastery. Even actions that once felt routine or trivial are now engaged with fully, because they are seen as meaningful practice in patience, diligence, and awareness. This transformation naturally affects how we perceive purpose. Rather than something imposed externally or artificially measured, purpose emerges organically from alignment with our principles, values, and a reasoned understanding of what is truly within our control. Tasks are undertaken not to impress others, satisfy expectations, or accumulate accolades, but simply because they are the right actions in the present moment. This approach cultivates a profound satisfaction, one rooted in intentionality and internal harmony rather than in contingent results. Even failure is gently reframed under this perspective. Setbacks are no longer indictments of your worth. They become valuable occasions to refine skill, deepen insight, and exercise resilience. The mind, now untethered from the need to prove itself, responds with calm evaluation and thoughtful adaptation, rather than panic or self-recrimination. Each mistake becomes useful feedback. Each challenge turns into a practical lesson in virtue applied under pressure. The Stoics call this the training of the soul, preparing it to act rightly, regardless of circumstance. By fully internalizing this approach, work is no longer experienced as a series of tests against an imaginary scoreboard. Instead, it becomes a continuous, unfolding exercise in mastery. Relationships with colleagues, collaborators, and even clients transform as well. Actions, feedback, and outcomes are approached with clarity and integrity, rather than attachment to praise or avoidance of criticism. Interactions become principled and purposeful. Judgment no longer interferes with genuine engagement. Presence, attention, and virtue now guide communication, collaboration, and contribution. Seneca noted this truth clearly. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. When attachment to recognition is removed, Both the individual and those around them experience a deep sense of sufficiency, clarity, and mutual trust. Ultimately, approaching work and purpose in this way fosters a deep, resilient satisfaction. Each act becomes intentional. Every decision aligns with principle. Energy is wisely conserved for what truly matters. Anxiety, distraction, and overattachment naturally diminish, leaving generous space for creativity, insight, and growth. Life becomes an unfolding exercise in excellence, measured not by applause, reward, or permanence, but by alignment with virtue. The liberation is profound. Effort becomes both effortless and deeply meaningful. The mind experiences true freedom within the structure of conscious engagement. By acting with integrity and attending fully to each task, whether monumental or mundane, we transform work from a source of tension into a beautiful practice of mastery and self-mastery. We discover fulfillment in the act itself, rather than in its outcome. There comes a point in this journey where the mind, unburdened by the compulsion to control, begins to experience a rare and resilient form of joy. It is quiet, subtle, yet profoundly deep, like the steady rhythm of a river flowing unhurriedly through a landscape that constantly shifts and changes, yet remains whole. This is not the fleeting exhilaration of pleasure or the temporary relief from desire. It is a lasting satisfaction rooted in clarity, presence, and the harmonious alignment of thought and action with reason. By acting as if nothing matters, in the sense of being detached from external validation or imagined stakes, we paradoxically discover that everything holds its own natural significance. The freedom from compulsion does not strip life of value. Instead, it reveals the intrinsic weight and rich texture of each moment. The mind that releases the need to measure, control, or justify begins to perceive the subtle harmonies of existence. Life's beauty is not created through our manipulation or forceful mastery, but through attentive observation, conscious participation, and sincere appreciation for its unfolding. Each sound, each sight, and each interaction carries its own fullness when noticed without preconception or judgment. Carl Jung reflected on the transformative power of such awareness when he wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." In living lightly, with awareness unclouded by fear or obsession, we step closer to this beautiful realization. Ordinary experiences gain depth, subtlety, and meaning simply because we engage with them fully, without the heavy overlay of anxiety, comparison, or artificial expectation. Joy becomes an emergent property of presence, a natural reflection of internal alignment rather than external circumstance. Forgiveness and compassion flow more naturally from this liberated state. When attachment to personal outcomes, recognition, or rigid expectations diminishes, grudges lose their power. Offense and hurt are simply observed, acknowledged, and gently released, rather than internalized or magnified by imagined injustice. Relationships shift in tone and quality, because the mind no longer operates from scarcity, fear, or defensiveness. Epictetus emphasized this principle when he said, "If someone succeeds in causing you distress, realize that it is not they who harm you, but your own judgment." The practice of acting lightly does not preclude justice or reasoned response, but it greatly diminishes the grip of ego-driven reaction. In doing so, the heart becomes lighter, the spirit more open, and the capacity for genuine connection expands. The natural cycles of life, birth, change, aging, loss, and death, are no longer sources of terror or resistance. Observing these phenomena with detachment and clarity allows for a profound reconciliation with impermanence. We witness the ebb and flow of existence as neither punishment nor reward, but as the inevitable unfolding of a vast system in which our individual dramas are simply part of a much larger rhythm. Marcus Aurelius captured this.